Hi, and welcome to another video by Jim the Car Guy. Today we have a 2002 Toyota Avalon with a 3.0. We're going to be replacing the air conditioner compressor. I'm going to start it up. I'm going to show you why we're going to change the compressor, and you'll hear yourself, why it's got to be changed because it's making so much noise. I'm going to start it up, and that way you can hear what the noise that it's making, so you'll have an idea of what that noise sounds like. Basically what it is it's in the clutch of the compressor. It's making a lot of noise, so we are going to change the entire unit versus changing just the clutch. We are going to discharge the air conditioner. We're going to remove the battery, and then we're going to remove the alternator and the drive belt, of course, so that we can take that compressor out. It's really not that bad. I think when you look it up on the computer, it gives you 2.7 hours to do it, plus to evacuate and recharge the system. There's an additional 1.4 hours. So we got about a 4 hour plus a job ahead of us. All right, let me start it up, and you're going to see what it sounds like. All right, go ahead. All right, that's our compressor down in the bottom right there, and you can see the drive belt is on it. We'll start it up and see what it sounds like. Now you can hear that. It sounds like it's a drive belt, but it's not. It's actually the compressor itself that's making the noise. So there you go. And of course, when you turn off the clutch on the compressor, the noise diminishes, but the noise is still there. So, all right, first thing we're going to do now is we're going to come over, disconnect the battery, take off the drive belt here, remove the alternator, and discharge the AC system. So, all right, let's get started. Okay, so like I said, we just disconnected the battery. Basically, it's just unscrew the bolt, disconnect the negative. Make sure you push it off to the side so it accidentally doesn't come back up on top here, because as you can see, you leave it sitting up here, and it kind of, from just being that way, it actually pulls over where it touches into it. All right, so we're just going to leave that down out of the way there so it doesn't interfere with anything. And then we're going to come out over here, and we're going to disconnect the drive belt, and we'll take the drive belt out. All right, so you just loosen up the bolt on the front right there. We're going to loosen up that bolt, and we're going to loosen up the other bolt on the other side of the alternator, right down inside there. You can see that bolt right there. We're going to loosen that one up, and then we're going to, this is the adjuster right here. We're going to turn that bolt and lower the alternator down so we can actually take that out and pull the belt off the car. Obviously, you're going to use an extension if you can. And if it gives you trouble and it doesn't come out, don't force it. Spray it with some penetrating oil, and you'll be able to get that bolt out. If it breaks, you're going to have a problem. So if it is rusted, take that time and spray it with some penetrating oil. All right, now once you have the alternator down far enough, you can just take the drive belt off, and you can push it out of the way, and that'll give you the it'll give you the room to get in there and disconnect the alternator and pull it out. All right, so now to disconnect the alternator, we're going to disconnect that bolt there, totally take that bolt out. We're going to also remove the other bolt, which is down over here. That bolt right there. Let's see. That bolt right there. And then we will be able to pull that alternator out. We may have to take that bracket off, but we'll see how it goes. The bolts out, we're going to come into the alternator over here, and we're going to disconnect this bolt right up in here. We're going to pop that cover off, and then we're going to pull this plug out right over here. The plug should have a little tab that we're going to push in to get it out. So we're going to do that now. Obviously, make sure your battery is disconnected before you do this. just going to put this off to the side for now. And then we're going to take out that 10mm bolt right up on top right there. Now, if you try to take out that 10mm bolt and it's really tight and you can't move it, hold the lead so that the entire piece does not rotate. Because if if you're trying to unscrew that bolt and it's too tight and you rotate it without holding that lead, you could snap off the bolt in here, and then you'll wind up having to change the alternator. So make sure you hold this cable with your hand if it's real tight. All right, we'll pull that other one out of the alternator. There should be a little tab. That's a good practice to put the bolt back on so that way you don't misplace it, or put it in your magnetic tray so you don't lose it. There should be a little tab right here we can push in. It's just a little tiny tab. I'll show you. That little tab right there, you just press it in. As cars get older, the plastic obviously gets a little bit more harder to push in, so you have to push really hard to get that tab to pop off. And now we're just going to take this and put this off to the side. As you can see, we disconnected this from this holder right here to give us a little more room. And now that alternator should be ready to come out. A little bit tight coming out of there, but you just have to move all your stuff out of the way. And now, I just want to point this out. Before we put this back in the car, what we're going to do is we're going to come over here and we're going to take the bolt that we previously took out. We're going to screw that bolt in there like that. We're going to go over in the vise and we're going to put the back. Well, let's see something. Maybe we don't have to. Let's just try this. Just watch this. Okay. Now that moves just a little bit. That'll give it a little bit more easier going back into that bracket down over here when we put it back together later on. So, all right, let's put it on the side for now. And now we're going to discharge the air conditioner. We're going to connect the machine up, and we're going to pull out the Freon inside the system. Okay, while we connect up, I just want to point this out to you as well. This bracket down here needs to come out. So the way we're going to take that bracket out is we already took the other bolt out that was down over here. So we took that bolt out right there already. We're going to come up over here. We're going to unbolt these right here, and we're going to take that bracket out while we pull it down into a vacuum. Okay, and then once you have all the bolts out, you just take that bracket and you pull it up and out of the way, so it'll open up the whole area for you. And now, as you can see, it makes it a little bit easier trying to get in down by the compressor to get it out. Now, just so you know, we did vacuum the air conditioning system down into a vacuum, so we have it totally empty. Sometimes when you pull these lines off, you still get a little bit of Freon or a little bit of a pressure out of there, so be careful when you take it out so it doesn't blow back in your face. As you can see, it is very rusty, but it doesn't really matter because we're going to be changing it. But this piece right in here, we are going to need to switch this over onto the new compressor. So, all right, the bolts we're going to take out is this one here, and then there's two more down the bottom. So I'm going to get in there, we'll unbolt it, and we're going to take these two lines out, and then we'll come back to it. Okay, so we're just going to unbolt the top right here. Now remember what I said, when you move that, sometimes you'll get like a little bit of pressure blowing back at you, so be careful with it. Now, even though we pulled it down into a vacuum, we saw what happens there, right? Probably a good idea to wear safety goggles when you're doing this so you don't have an issue. Way back a long time ago, I got Freon on my face, and it's not a very pleasant experience. That oil and the Freon, you can't see nothing. As you can see, we sprayed it up with some penetrating oil just to make it come out a little bit easier. We just relocate that line out of the way so we have a little more room to work down there. Now after we took the other one out, we don't have to worry about pressure in this one, obviously, because we have the pressures already out. All right, now we're going to remove the 4 bolts to hold the compressor into the vehicle. You can see this bracket here up in the front. We're going to take that bracket and we're going to relocate that off to the side as well. Looks like we have our connector right through there too, so we're going to disconnect that as well. Okay, we're going to disconnect the other 2 bolts on the bottom, and once we have them disconnected, we'll come back and we'll get that compressor out of there. Now when you take the compressor out, you got to be careful because sometimes it'll drip oil out through those ports. All right, and we'll bring it over on the bench now, and then we're just going to switch around this bracket here. There are 2 Allen keys right in here. We're going to take these 2 Allen keys out, and we'll switch that battery at the bracket over, and we're going to get. Okay, now we're just going to put the compressor back down where it came out. Now, being that we switched this over right here, we did put a new O-ring on there. Never use your old O-rings. You always have to use new ones. We're just going to lay it in place there, and then we're going to catch the bolts. Now, before you put all the bolts in tight, we're going to catch all 4 of them loosely first so that everything lines up properly. Because if you put in 1 bolt and you tighten it down, it may be off slightly and the other bolts won't line up. So we're going to catch everything before we tighten it up. Okay, so now that we have all of the bolts are tight and the bracket is back on, we now have to put the lines back on. Once the lines are on, we're going to connect it up to the machine, and we're going to pump it down into a vacuum. So, all right, let's continue with that. Okay, now we're going to take the lines. Now, just so you know, we did change the O-rings on here. All the O-rings, whenever you open an air conditioning system up, you never reuse the old O-rings. Change them because you're going to have a leak. And we have the new O-rings on there, and we put some oil on there to make it slide into the compressor easily without damaging the O-rings. Now, when you put these nuts on, they don't have to be real tight. We're just going to snug them in because it's going to basically hold the line in place so it doesn't move. The O-ring is what's going to keep it from leaking. That's why it's important that you put new O-rings on it, so you don't have any problem. And we're going to do the same thing on the other one. We change the O-ring on here as well, and we put some oil on there, some compressor oil, so that it slides in nice and easy. Okay, now before we put that second line in, we're just going to plug the compressor connector back together because it's going to be a little easier to do now before we put the second line in place. And you want to listen for it to snap in place because you want to make sure it's locked in nice and tight. All right, now we're just going to move that line out of the way. We will put it back into its bracket later on, but we're going to put that line in with the O-ring, with the new O-ring on it, and then we'll tighten that down. Okay, so now both of our lines are tight. We have our plug back in for the compressor. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to put the alternator back in. In the meantime, we're going to pump it down into a vacuum. So let's put the alternator on and we'll continue. Okay, now that the alternator is laid back in and the bolt is actually up in the top and down on the bottom, they're not tight, they're just turned in loosely. We're going to reconnect the electrical lead here, the power supply, and this is plugged back in over here. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to lay the belt back in over here, and then we're going to adjust the belt to the proper tension. And then once the belt is tightened up, then we'll come in here and we'll tighten up the 2 bolts that secure the alternator in place, and then we're going to pump it down into a vacuum. So let's put this all back together and then we'll come right back. Okay, now we're going to reconnect our machine safely onto the high and low side. All right. Alright, we're going to pump it down into a vacuum now for 15 minutes. Make sure it pulls it, and then we're going to charge it up. So we'll come back in 15 minutes. Okay, now that we have it pumped into a vacuum, we're going to install the oil back into the system because this compressor came dry. So we're just going to put the oil back in. And now we looked underneath the hood, up underneath here, and right there is the tag that tells you how much goes in there. And it calls for 1.43 as maximum and 120 something as minimum. So we're going to put in 1.3 pounds, and then we'll start it up. So that's what we're going to do. And we're going to close it up, and then we're going to start it up. All right, you can start it up then, Tom. Let's check our pressures. Okay. As you can hear, it is nice and quiet now. Okay, so that's it. Take your time. Just make sure that everything is on nice and tight. Tighten up all the bolts. Make sure your belt is nice and tight, and that's it. You're out the door. All right, as always, thanks for watching. See you on the next one.